The river is frozen, and that's the moment they realize they might not survive. It is the winter of 1609, inside the wooden walls of Jamestown, the first permanent English colony in North America. Hunger is already carving shadows into human faces. Dreams of gold and glory have been replaced by silence, smoke, and fear. But here's the terrifying question. How did a colony built to secure England's future become a place where survival itself felt impossible? Just 2 years earlier, more than 100 settlers had stepped onto this unfamiliar shore with confidence. They believed they were building something permanent, a foothold in the new world. The fort stood beside the James River like a fragile promise of prosperity. Yet the land they chose would soon betray them. Swampy ground bred disease, mosquitoes spread malaria, drinking water turned brackish and foul. Still, the settlers searched for gold instead of planting crops. They trusted that supplies from England would solve every problem, and at first it seemed they were right. Captain John Smith imposed strict discipline. He negotiated food from nearby indigenous communities and forced idle men to work. His rule was harsh but simple. If you do not work, you do not eat. But then everything changed, and the change came suddenly. In 1609, Smith was injured in a gunpowder explosion and returned to England. His leadership vanished overnight. At the same time, a supply fleet sailing from England was struck by a hurricane. The flagship wrecked in Bermuda.
Jamestown never received the reinforcements it was waiting for. Now imagine standing inside the fort as autumn fades into winter. Leadership is fractured, food is running out, and beyond the wooden walls, Powhatan warriors watch and wait. Trade has broken down, hunting routes are cut off. The settlement is no longer protected by its walls, it is trapped by them. Historians would later call what followed the starving time, but the name does not capture the reality. At first, they rationed what little food remained. Cornmeal stretched thin across many mouths. Salted meat scraped from empty barrels. When that ran out, they turned to desperate measures. Horses were slaughtered, then dogs, then cats. Soon even rats became valuable sources of protein.
And winter had only just begun. The cold deepened, the river froze solid, making fishing impossible. Firewood grew scarce, disease spread through weakened bodies, dysentery, typhoid, pneumonia. Picture walking through the fort in January. Smoke clings to the air. Coughing echoes between timber walls. Bodies lie wrapped in cloth near cabins because there are too few healthy settlers left to dig graves. Some are buried shallowly. Others remain frozen into the earth itself. And then came something darker, something many tried not to speak about. Centuries later, archaeologists would uncover cut marks on the skull of a teenage girl. Evidence suggests that starvation drove at least some settlers to cannibalism. Let that sink in. This was meant to be England's proud expansion into a new world. Instead, it became a fight against hunger so severe that social norms collapsed. Here's what makes the story even more haunting. Many of the settlers were gentlemen, men unaccustomed to manual labor. They arrived expecting wealth, not hardship. Farming skills were scarce. Planning had been flawed from the beginning. As the weeks dragged on, discipline eroded. Some settlers attempted to escape the fort in small groups, hoping to find food in the wilderness. Few ever returned. Outside the walls, Powhatan forces maintained a quiet siege. They understood something crucial. Starvation could defeat an enemy more effectively than open battle. By February of 1610, the colony had nearly vanished. Of roughly 500 settlers at the start of winter, only about 60 remained. Think about that. Nearly 90% gone in a single season.
The once busy fort had become a graveyard of broken hopes. And just when it seemed Jamestown would disappear completely, like the lost colony of Roanoke, something unexpected happened. In May, survivors from the wrecked supply ship finally arrived from Bermuda. They brought news that reinforcements were coming. But the remaining settlers were already preparing to abandon the colony. They boarded ships and began sailing downriver, ready to give up the dream. Then, at the mouth of the James River, they encountered a fleet arriving with fresh troops and provisions. Lord Delaware ordered them to turn back. Jamestown would survive, but only by the narrowest margin imaginable. Now imagine if those ships had been delayed just a few more days, if the fort had emptied, if England had abandoned Virginia entirely. History might look very different today. The starving time reshaped the colony's future. Harsh discipline replaced disorder. Food production became the highest priority. In later years, tobacco cultivation would finally bring economic stability. Trade improved. Temporary peace followed through alliances and marriage. Yet none of that erased the memory of that winter. Jamestown is often described as the beginning of English America, but its survival was never guaranteed. It was fragile, violent, nearly erased. The starving time reminds us that colonization was not a simple story of courage and triumph. It was chaotic and often mismanaged. And perhaps the most unsettling truth is this: nature alone did not cause the disaster. Leadership mistakes, poor planning, unrealistic expectations, all of these decisions shaped the catastrophe. When we walk through the archaeological site today, it is easy to see reconstructed walls and interpretive signs. Harder to imagine the hunger, the desperation, the moral collapse. But the frozen winter of 1609 still echoes through the origins of a nation. If this journey helped you step inside the fort, if you felt the cold air and the silence of empty storehouses, then you understand why these stories matter. Subscribe now and join us as we continue uncovering the turning points that nearly changed history forever. Because sometimes the most powerful chapters are not about victory. They are about survival. And the winter America almost didn't survive still shapes its beginning.